Welcome to History and Mythology. Today, we talk about one of the greatest heroes of Greek mythology, Heracles. Heracles was the son of Zeus and the mortal Alcmene. Despite his divine strength, his life was filled with hardship. Hera, Zeus's wife, despised Heracles and sought to destroy him at every turn. Her hatred stemmed from Zeus's infidelity, and she ensured that Heracles' life would be one of suffering. Her greatest act of vengeance came when she struck Heracles with a sudden and uncontrollable madness, causing him to commit an unspeakable crime. He killed his own wife, Megara, and their children. When he regained his senses and saw what he had done, he was overcome with grief and sought redemption. He traveled to the Oracle of Delphi, hoping for guidance. The Oracle instructed him to serve King Eurystheus of Mycenae for 12 years and complete a series of seemingly impossible tasks. Each of these challenges was not merely a test of his physical strength, but of his intelligence, resilience, and spirit. This is the story of his trials. King Eurystheus wasted no time in assigning Heracles his first labor, to slay the Nemean Lion, a beast born of Typhon and Echidna. This lion was monstrous in size and terrorized the region around Nemea, instilling fear in all those who lived there. Heracles set out on this dangerous mission, determined to succeed. As he ventured into the mountains near Nemea, the land was eerily silent. No farmers, no shepherds, everyone had fled from the lion's wrath. Heracles searched tirelessly through the rough terrain, and as the sun began to set, he found the lion's lair nestled in the dark gorge. The cave had 2 exits, and Heracles, thinking strategically, blocked one with an enormous boulder, then hid behind it, waiting for the lion to appear. As dusk fell, the lion emerged, its mane flowing like a storm of gold. Heracles aimed and fired 3 arrows from his bow, but the lion's hide was impervious to the attacks. Enraged, the lion lunged at Heracles with ferocious power. Heracles responded by striking the lion's head with his mighty club, stunning it, but for a brief moment. Seizing this opportunity, he grappled with the beast, using his tremendous strength to strangle it to death. Heracles then draped the lifeless lion over his shoulders and made his way back to Nemea. There, he offered a sacrifice to Zeus in gratitude for his victory and in honor of his achievement, established the Nemean Games. When Heracles brought the lion's pelt to Mycenae, King Eurystheus was horrified by the sheer power Heracles demonstrated. So terrified was the king that he forbade Heracles from entering the city, and from that point onward watched in fear whenever Heracles returned to present the proof of his labor. After completing his first labor, Heracles was tasked with slaying the Lernean Hydra, a fearsome serpent-like creature with 9 heads, one of which was immortal. Born from Typhon and Echidna, the Hydra dwelled in the swamp near Lerna, where it wreaked havoc by devouring herds and destroying crops. Heracles set out on his journey accompanied by his nephew, Iolaus. Upon reaching the swamp, Heracles left Iolaus with his chariot and ventured alone to find the Hydra. He soon discovered its lair, a cave surrounded by thick, murky waters. To prepare for the battle, Heracles heated his arrows red hot, preparing to provoke the creature. The Hydra emerged, its massive tail coiling and hissing. Heracles stomped on its body, pinning it down, but the Hydra struck back with vengeance, lashing out with its many heads. Every time Heracles severed one head, 2 more would grow in its place. Just then, a giant crab emerged from the swamp, pinching Heracles' foot. The situation grew dire, and Heracles called for Iolaus' assistance. Iolaus responded quickly by killing the crab, setting fire to nearby branches, and using them to cauterize the Hydra's necks after Heracles severed them. This tactic prevented heads from regrowing. Finally, after a long and exhausting battle, Heracles severed the immortal head of the Hydra and buried it deep underground, placing a massive boulder over it to prevent its return. Triumphant, he dipped his arrows in the Hydra's poisonous bile, making them deadly to anyone they'd struck. Heracles returned to Tiryns victorious, but Eurystheus, always eager to challenge him, had already prepared his next impossible task. Eurystheus' third labor for Heracles was to rid the land of the Stymphalian birds, vicious creatures that terrorized the area around the Arcadian city of Stymphalis. These birds were no ordinary fowl, They had sharp, bronze beaks and claws and could launch their razor-sharp bronze feathers like deadly arrows. The Stymphalian birds had turned the fertile land into a barren wasteland, and was up to Heracles to eliminate this menace. The task seemed daunting, but Heracles was not alone. The goddess Athena appeared and gifted him 2 bronze rattles, forged by the god Hephaestus, instructing him to use them to scare the birds into the air. Following Athena's guidance, Heracles climbed a high hill near the birds' nesting grounds and struck the rattles together, creating a deafening sound that echoed throughout the land. The birds, startled by the noise, took flight in a frenzied panic, their razor-sharp feathers raining down like a deadly storm. From this safe position atop the hill, Heracles took advantage of the chaos, drawing his bow and firing his poisoned arrows at the birds. One by one, the creatures fell, their deadly feathers no match for the sharp precision of Heracles' arrows. The few birds that survived fled to distant lands, beyond the borders of Greece to the shores of the Black Sea, never to return. Heracles had once again completed the labor, but Eurystheus was not satisfied. Another even greater challenge awaited him. For his 4th labor, Eurystheus commanded Heracles to capture the Ceryneian Hind, a magnificent and sacred creature sent by Artemis to punish humankind. This hind was unlike any other. It had golden antlers, bronze hooves, and possessed incredible speed that made it impossible to catch. After a full year, Heracles pursued it relentlessly, crossing treacherous mountains, vast plains, and swift rivers. His chase took him northward to the land of the Hyperboreans, near the source of the river Ister, where the hind, exhausted from running, finally stopped to rest. Heracles seized the opportunity, but as he approached, the hind once again escaped, dashing southward with incredible speed. The chase continued, and it was only when Heracles returned to Arcadia that he was able to finally wound the hind in the leg with an arrow. This gave him the chance to capture it alive, as Eurystheus had demanded. However, just as he was about to transport the creature to Mycenae, the goddess Artemis appeared, furious at Heracles for harming his sacred hind. She scolded him, questioned why he, a mortal, would dare to wound her divine creature. "Do you not know, Heracles, that the hind is mine?" she asked, with her voice full of wrath. "Why have you offended me by wounding this sacred animal? Do you think yourself greater than the gods?" Heracles, understanding the goddess's anger, bowed respectfully and spoke with humility. "O great daughter of Leto," he began, "I do not seek to harm your creature. I have always honored the gods of Olympus and have never seen myself as their equal, though I am the son of Zeus. It was not my choice to pursue your hind, but the command of Eurystheus. The gods themselves decreed that I must serve him, and I cannot disobey their will." Moved by his sincerity and humility, Artemis's anger softened, and she forgave Heracles. She allowed him to take the sacred hind to Mycenae, and Heracles completed the labor, presenting the creature to Eurystheus as proof of his triumph. Despite his success, however, the goddess's challenge left a lasting reminder of his delicate balance between mortals and gods. After a year-long pursuit of the Ceryneian hind, Heracles was tasked with capturing the fearsome Erymanthian boar, a massive creature that ravaged the land surrounding the city of Psophos. This boar, with its enormous tusks and terrifying strength, spared no one, killing both humans and animals alike. Determined to succeed, Heracles embarked on his journey towards Mount Erymanthos, where the boar dwelled. Along the way, Heracles stopped to visit the wise centaur Pholus, who welcomed him with honor and prepared a feast. During their celebration, Pholus opened a jar of rare wine, its fragrant aroma spreading throughout the air. This wine, a communal treasure of all the centaurs, enraged the others when they caught wind of it. Furious, they stormed Pholus's house, attacking both the centaur and Heracles. Unfazed, Heracles sprang into action, throwing flaming logs at the centaurs. The centaurs scattered in panic, but Heracles, with his poisoned arrows, pursued and struck them down. The chase led to Malea, where the centaurs sought refuge with their friend Chiron, the wisest of all centaurs. In his anger, Heracles shot an arrow at the centaur, only to realize with horror that he had struck Chiron, not an enemy. The wound, poisoned by the Hydra's bile, was incurable, and Chiron, knowing he could not survive, chose to descend into the underworld to escape his suffering. Devastated, Heracles continued his journey to Mount Erymanthos. There, in the deep forests of the mountain, he finally cornered the boar. He chased it for hours until it was trapped in the deep snow at the peak. Seizing the opportunity, Heracles bound the boar alive and carried it back to Mycenae. When Eurystheus saw the creature, he was so terrified that he hid inside a large bronze jar, unable to bear the sight of the mighty boar. Heracles had once again triumphed in his labor, but the sorrow of losing Chiron weighed heavily upon him. Eurystheus' next labor for Heracles seemed nearly impossible: to clean the stables of King Augeas in a single day. Augeas, the wealthy ruler of Elis and his son of Helios, possessed vast herds, including 300 white bulls, 200 red bulls, 12 sacred bulls of Helios, and a single bull so beautiful it gleamed like a star. The stables, which housed these countless animals, had not been cleaned in years and were filled with an overwhelming amount of filth. Heracles, ever confident in his strength and ingenuity, offered to clean the stables in a single day if Augeas would give him 1/10 of his herds as payment. The proud king, believing the task to be impossible, agreed. Heracles, however, had a plan. He broke down the walls of the stables on two opposite sides and diverted the waters of the Alpheus and Peneus rivers through them. The swift-flowing rivers swept away the filth in a matter of hours, and Heracles rebuilt the walls, leaving the stables pristine. When Heracles returned to Augeas to claim the rewards, the king, dishonoring their agreement, refused to give him the promised share for his herd. Heracles returned to Tiryns empty-handed, but the memory of his betrayal stayed with him. Years later, after being freed from his servitude to Eurystheus, Heracles sought revenge on Augeas. He led an army into Elis, defeated the king in battle, and killed him with one of his poisoned arrows. After his victory, Heracles gathered the spoils of war near the city of Pisa, where he made sacrifices to the gods and established the Olympic Games, honoring the gods every 4 years. The sacred plain around the site was surrounded by olive trees dedicated to Athena and planted by Heracles himself. Heracles also sought vengeance on Augeas' allies, particularly the king of Pylos, Neleus. Heracles captured Pylos, killed Neleus, and slaughtered his 11 sons. Even Neleus' son, Pericimenes, who could transform into various creatures with the power granted by Poseidon, met his end when he, in the form of a bee, landed on Heracles' horse. Only Neleus' son Nestor survived, destined to become known for his wisdom and heroism in later years. Heracles' triumphs in this labor were not only a personal victory, but also a foundation for the lasting legacy of the Olympic Games. For his 7th labor, Heracles was ordered to leave Greece and journey to the island of Crete to capture the mighty Cretan bull. This powerful creature had been sent by Poseidon to King Minos as a sign of divine favor, but Minos, captivated by the bull's extraordinary beauty, refused to sacrifice it as commanded. Instead, he sacrificed another bull, enraging Poseidon. In retaliation, the sea-born bull went mad, rampaging across the island, leaving destruction in its wake. Heracles, determined to complete the task, ventured to Crete and captured the ferocious bull. With incredible strength and skill, he tamed the beast and rode it across the sea from Crete to Peloponnese. When he arrived in Mycenae and presented the bull to Eurystheus, the king, fearful of Poseidon's wrath, refused to keep the animal. He raised the bull, which immediately charged through Peloponnese, uncontrollably rampaging northward. The wild bull eventually reached the plains of Marathon in Attica, where it was finally slain by the Athenian hero Theseus. Though Heracles did not retain the bull, his feat of capturing and taming it cemented his legacy as a hero capable of taming even the mightiest of creatures. After successfully capturing the Cretan bull, Heracles was sent to Thrace for his 8th labor. We had to retrieve the infamous man-eating mares of Diomedes. The horses were extraordinary in both beauty and strength, but their savagery matched their appearance. Bound by iron chains, they were fed human flesh, as Diomedes offered any foreigner seeking refuge in his city as food for his beasts. Heracles, accompanied by his companions, bravely ventured into this hostile land. He seized the horses and began leading them towards his ship. However, King Diomedes and his fierce Bistone warriors gave chase. In the ensuing battle, Heracles entrusted his dear companion, Abderus, the son of Hermes, to guard the horses while he fought Diomedes and his men. Though outnumbered, Heracles and his companions prevailed, and Diomedes fell in combat. But tragedy struck when Heracles returned to the horses and found that the savage mares had torn Abdeus apart. Grief-stricken, Heracles honored his friends with a grand burial, raising a mound over his grave, founding a city in his name, Abdera. Heracles then brought the mares to Eurystheus, who, fearing their savagery, ordered them to be set free. The wild horses fled into the dense forest of Mount Nisaeon, where they were eventually hunted down and devoured by wild beasts, bringing an end to their reign of terror. For his 9th labor, Heracles was sent to the distant land of the Amazons to acquire a magical belt belonging to Queen Hippolyta. This powerful artifact, a gift from Ares, symbolized the queen's rule over the Amazon. Eurystheus' daughter, Admete, coveted it, and so Heracles was commanded to bring it to Mycenae. With a small band of heroes, including the renowned Theseus, Heracles embarked on a long and perilous journey to the far shores of the Black Sea. Before reaching the Amazons, Heracles encountered trouble at the island of Paros. The sons of Minos killed 2 of his companions, and in his rage, Heracles waged war on the island. After many deaths, the islanders sent envoys to offer peace, exchanging 2 of their own for Heracles' fallen comrades. Heracles accepted and continued his journey to Mysia, where King Lycus warmly received them. However, they were soon attacked by the Berbicean king. Heracles defeated him, destroyed his city, and gave the lands to Lycus, who honored the hero by naming the region Heraclea. Finally, Heracles and his band arrived at the Amazonian city of Themyscira, where Queen Hippolyta, impressed by his legendary reputation, agreed to give him her belt. But Hera, ever hostile towards Heracles, disguised herself as an Amazon and stirred up a fierce rebellion among the warrior women. She falsely accused Heracles of intending to abduct the queen, leading to a bloody conflict. The Amazons, now enraged, attacked. Among them was Aella, a swift-footed warrior who struck fiercely at Heracles, but he overpowered her and swiftly struck her down. Prothoe, who had killed 7 of Heracles' companions, fell to his poisoned arrows. 7 more Amazonians, including some of Artemis' fiercest warriors, charged at Heracles with spears, but none of them could land a blow. With his mighty club, Heracles felled them one by one. As the battle raged on, Heracles captured the Amazonian leaders, Melanippe and Antiope. The aftermath, a peace was brokered, and Queen Hippolyta handing over her prized belt. Heracles returned to Mycenae, victorious in his task, with the belt of Hippolyta as proof of his strength and valor. After completing his journey to the land of the Amazons, Heracles was sent on his 10th labor by Eurystheus to bring back the cattle of the monstrous Geryon, a giant born of Cyrasor and Calliroi. The cattle grazed on the island of Erythea, situated at the edge of the world, where the god Helios set every evening. Heracles' journey took him through vast deserts and barbaric lands, but he pressed on, determined to complete the impossible task. Upon reaching the edge of the world, Heracles erected 2 towering pillars as a monument to his journey. As he pondered how to reach the island, the chariot of Helios appeared, blazing with light. The intense heat of the sun almost overwhelmed him, but when Heracles stood his ground, Helios, impressed by his bravery, offered him his golden vessel, the chariot that carried Helios across the sky. With it, Heracles sailed across the ocean to Erythea. On the island, he faced immediate threats. First, the 2-headed dog Orthros attacked, but with a single blow from his club, Heracles killed it. Next, the giant herdsman Erythion challenged him, but the hero swiftly defeated him, driving the cattle towards the sea where the golden vessel awaited. When Geryon, a giant with 3 bodies and 6 limbs, saw his herd under threat, he pursued Heracles. Geryon was a formidable foe, wielding 3 shields and hurling 3 spears at once. But with Athena's divine aid, Heracles struck swiftly, shooting arrows into Geryon's 3 eyes, before delivering the killing blow with his club. With Geryon defeated, Heracles used the golden vessel to carry the cattle back, but more challenges awaited. As he crossed Spain and Italy, one of the cattle strayed and swam to Sicily, where King Eryx claimed it. Heracles challenged the king to a duel, crushing him in battle and reclaiming the cow. Hera, ever vengeful, drove the remaining cattle mad, scattering in every direction. After much effort, Heracles gathered the herd and delivered them to Eurystheus, who sacrificed them in honor of the goddess Hera. Thus, Heracles completed yet another impossible labor. Heracles' 11th labor, assigned by Eurystheus, was perhaps the most daunting yet: to capture Cerberus, the three-headed, dragon-tailed guardian of the underworld. The beast was fierce, with snakes writhing around his neck and venomous foam dripping from his mouth. To achieve this, Heracles would need to descend into the very realm of the dead. Heracles began his journey by traveling to Laconia and descending through the chasm near Taenarum, the entrance to Hades' domain. There he encountered the trapped heroes Theseus and Prithous, who had tried to abduct Persephone. Theseus begged for his release, and Heracles freed him. But when he tried to rescue Pirithous, the earth trembled, signaling the gods' disapproval. Reluctantly, he moved on, guided by the messenger god Hermes and accompanied by Athena. Within the underworld, the souls of the dead scattered at the sight of Heracles, but the ghost of Meleager, a former hero, asked Heracles to protect his orphaned sister, Deianira. Heracles promised to fulfill his dying friend's wish and pressed on. Along the way, he briefly encountered the terrifying shadow of Medusa, but Hermes calmed him, explaining that she was just a spectre with no power in the underworld. Finally, Heracles reached the throne of Hades and Persephone, who were both impressed by his fearlessness. After explaining his mission, Hades agreed to let him take Cerberus, but set a condition. Heracles must subdue the beast without weapons. The hero accepted the challenge. Heracles searched the underworld and eventually found Cerberus at the Augean river. Using his immense strength, he wrestled the hellhound into submission, despite the creature's violent thrashing and venomous tail. With the beast finally subdued, Heracles dragged him onto the surface. Cerberus was terrified of the daylight, trembling and dripping poisonous foam wherever he went. When the hero presented Cerberus before Eurystheus, the king recoiled in terror, begging Heracles to return the beast to the underworld. Heracles complied, leading the mighty hound back into his dark realm, completing his 11th labor. Heracles' final and most perilous labor for Eurystheus required him to retrieve 3 golden apples from the garden of Hesperides, daughters of the Titan Atlas. These apples, a wedding gift from Gaia to Hera, grew on a magical tree guarded by a fearsome dragon. To complete this task, Heracles needed to find the elusive Titan Atlas, who bore the heavens on his shoulders. Heracles' journey began with an arduous search for the path to the Hesperides. He traveled across Asia and Europe, retracing his steps from the quest for Geryon's cattle, but no one knew the way. Eventually, he reached the river Eridanus, where he met nymphs who advised him to capture the ancient sea god Nereus, the only being who knew the route. After a struggle, Heracles seized Nereus, who, after changing forms in an attempt to escape, finally revealed the secret path in exchange for his release. Heracles continued his journey through Libya, where he encountered Anateus, a giant who drew strength from the earth. Realizing Anateus' power came from contact with the ground, Heracles lifted him off the earth and strangled him, ending the threat. Finally, Heracles found Atlas, and through clever negotiation tricked the Titan into retrieving the apple, while Heracles briefly took the weight of the heavens on his shoulders. When Atlas returned and attempted to deceive him, Heracles used his own cunning to escape with the apples. Heracles presented the golden apples to Eurystheus, who instead of keeping them, gave them back to Heracles. The hero offered them to Athena, who returned them to the Hesperides, ensuring they remained in their sacred grove. With the completion of this labor, Heracles was freed from Eurystheus' service, though the relentless pursuit of Hera continued. Thank you for watching History and Mythology. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And until next time.